everyone. Today we're going to continue the work we've been doing with the characters from the stories Julian tells. I'm going to be reading another chapter from this book. You're going to need your paper from your learning packet. It should be on day 1 of your reading work. At the top it says, what do you predict will happen in the chapter Our Garden? So make sure you have that with you and a pencil before we get started. The last time we were together, we read the chapter called Catalog Cats. And remember, in that chapter, we learned a little bit more about our characters. Julian had once again told a lie. He lied to his younger brother, Huey, and told him that cats would pop out of a catalog, and that those cats did different kinds of work in the garden. Dad went along with this lie in order to not make Huey feel bad, and is also, I think, a little bit of a punishment for Julian. And he told Huey that those catalog cats were invisible. Or maybe not invisible, but so fast that you couldn't see them. Today we're going to read the next chapter. It's called Our Garden. And in that chapter, I really want us to focus on the characters and how they change. So we're going to be making a prediction about this chapter, and then as we read, we're going to use what we already know about those characters and see if we can notice changes in their behavior. So as characters grow, they learn new things, and sometimes it changes how they act towards each other. So as we're reading, we're listening for how a character might change. That's our target for today. This is a short chapter, so we're going to read the whole thing. Before we do, let's take a look at some of the pictures and see if you can make a prediction. So the story starts with Our Garden. And then we have a picture here. It looks like one of the boys is laying outside at night, and they're imagining the catalog cats all around. Now I'd like you to stop and think about your prediction. You'll need your paper, and before we read any more, you're going to write what you predict will happen in the chapter Our Garden. Stop the video and do that now. Okay, now let's read to find out what happens with those catalog cats. Our Garden. We planted tomatoes, squash, onions, garlic, peas, pumpkins, and potatoes. Besides that, we planted 2 special things we saw in the catalog, which were genuine corn of the ancients. It grows 20 feet high. Harvest your corn with a ladder. Surprise your friends and neighbors. Wow, corn that would grow 20 feet high? I'd like that in my garden too. And make a house of flowers. Our beans grow 10 feet tall. Grow them around string. Make a beautiful roof and walls out of their scarlet blossoms. Oh, I got a picture in my head of what that would look like. So they're going to use strings to build like the walls of the house, and then the bean plants will grow around the strings and fill it in. I also noticed that the author used a different font, or the way the letters look here, and they made it narrower. This helps me understand that these are words that came right out of the seed catalog. Huey was the one who wanted the house of flowers the most. I wanted the giant corn. My father said he wasn't sure he wanted either giant corn or a flower house, and if we wanted them, we would have to take care of them all summer by pulling weeds. We said we would. We planted everything one Saturday. We worked all day long, getting the ground smooth and even and laying the little seeds down in rows. The whole time I felt the catalog cats were there, swirling their tails in the air. Were the catalog cats really there, or was he just imagining that? We finished just before the sun went down. My mother gave Huey and me baths. She said we were darker than the garden. She said we were dirty enough that she could grow plants on our hands and knees. I think Mom's talking about how they had so much dirt on them, it was almost like you could plant seeds on their hands and knees. When we were clean, we had supper with chocolate pie for dessert and went to bed. Huey went to sleep right away, but I didn't. I put my jacket on over my pajamas and went out the back door to the garden. In the dark, it looked as if the garden was sleeping. I lay down on the grass. It was cold and a little wet. Oh, so the words just told me that this is Julian. He's got his jacket on, laying down in the grass. I looked up. I thought all the catalog cats were sitting on the roof of the garage, staring at me. Over the top of the garage was the moon, a little moon with sharp horns. There were birds rustling in the dark branches of the trees. The seeds were dreaming, I thought. I put my mouth next to the ground and I spoke to the seeds very softly. Grow, and you corn seeds, grow high as the house. In just 1 week, the seeds did start to grow, and we watered them and weeded them. By the end of the summer, we had vegetables from the garden every night, and the corn did grow as high as the house, although there wasn't very much of it, and it was almost too tough to eat. The best thing of all was Huey's house made of flowers. After a while, the flowers dropped their petals and turned into beans, and we ate the beans for supper. So what Huey made was probably the first house anyone ever played in and then ate. Catalog cats are strange, but a house you eat for dinner is stranger. So now that we're finished with the chapter, let's think about how our characters have changed. One thing I noticed is how hardworking both Julian and Huey were throughout this chapter. They had the idea of the catalog cats helping them, but we know that that really wasn't who was planting the garden and taking care of it. Julian and Huey were being very hardworking. Also, at the end of the chapter, I noticed that Julian almost seemed happier for Huey's success with his bean house than he was with his own corn. And that seems like a big change in Julian, being able to celebrate with someone else when something good happens for them, rather than mostly thinking about himself and telling fibs that for his own entertainment or to get what he wants. So I think we saw a lot of growth in Julian as a character in this chapter. When you're thinking about what we've learned so far, another thing we might want to think about is how these characters have shown that they care for each other. So throughout the 3 chapters, we've noticed different ways they take care of each other. Father was making a pudding for the mother. Julian was really working hard in the garden to make it work for Huey because he knew he had lied to him about the catalog cats. Both Huey and Julian worked together in the garden to take care of it all summer. So I see a lot of different ways that this family works together and helps each other. Remember, you've got one more question to answer on your paper, and that's, what did Julian learn in this chapter? So think about what Julian learned and how he might have changed from the other 2 chapters we've read. When you're finished with your work, take a picture of it and send it to your teacher.